The following content contains personal experiences of our hosts and guests. We are not experts in this matter. We encourage challenging conversations with others and to achieve healing from our childhood. We hope to connect and allow a safe space to have an open discussion. It is not intended as a substitute for the advice of a qualified professional, diagnosis, or treatment.
On this side of my body, it's like the meat is not as comfy as I thought. How is it over there?
It's very comfy here.
Okay, I know you're just like you.
Yeah, I'm just
You're
lounging
soft.
here.
Yeah, I feel like
I don't know. It looks like I'm too comfy. Like, am I too comfy on this chair?
Oh, do I not need the pillow?
Yeah.
Yeah. I almost wanted to take my shoes off to just be squatting up here. I almost did that midway.
Or would that be like the Asian American thing to do?
Yeah, I
The
know.
first generation.
I know.
All your guests have to take off your shoes.
API.
All right, welcome back, First Gen Podcast listeners. I hope you guys are doing well. It is May. This year is flying by, but I hope everyone's doing really awesome. But May is AAPI month, which is really exciting. Something awesome to celebrate. I'm one of your hosts, Nina Flores. I'm joined here by my lovely co-host and cousin,
Tiffany, Kristie. Welcome back, First Gen Feelers, to another podcast here at the lovely Spotify studios. And we are graced and blessed to have a good friend, colleague, entrepreneur joining us today. His name is Kevin, and he has his own media company. He's working a lot in motion graphics, production, content strategy, and you'll hear a little bit about his new app that he's cooking up.
Yeah.
We used to work together. Fun fact. Forever, a lot feels like for many moons ago. You literally took the words out of my mouth. Many moons ago, and Kevin, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Our topic today that we wanted to chat through is the scarcity mindset, which I did a quick little summary on our fun, thanks to the internet. Scarcity mindset, a way of thinking that focuses on what you lack or what you perceive as a lack of resources, opportunities. And yeah, after catching up with you at a cafe shop the other week, we wanted to dive a little bit more into this as children of immigrants and what scarcity mindset means to us and our experience growing up with that mindset with our families. So to kick it off, Kevin, we wanted to get a little bit more of your family background, and how your family came out here to the States, and how you got to LA and all that.
Yeah, so I'm actually born and raised in Southern California in Orange County. My parents are immigrants from Vietnam, though we're Chinese background, and my grandparents are from China. My family has like more of an immigration type story where my grandparents were in China, then had emigrated to Vietnam because of communists, and my parents then emigrated to the U.S. Because of communists. So it's just like a running away from communist story. But basically, they had come out here back in the 70s. I could give you the exact year, but I don't want to butcher it. Out of respect to them, so I'll just say the 70s. But they had come out here and first came to Minnesota, was where they landed. They were sponsored by the church to come out here, and they were in their early teens, and they had spent a few years there before coming out to California for job opportunities, and then moved around California quite a bit, and that's where my family, my sister and I came along. So yeah, basically like kind of a story of across the globe and landed here in sunny California.
Lovely. That is wild. They immigrated to Minnesota first. So similar to our family.
Our family history. Yeah.
Coming to the States. Do you did your parents ever talk about Minnesota, or was it all just here in Southern California?
No, they talked about it quite a bit. They didn't talk too much about the times that led up to it and like all of the war time that led up to their time there. It's very like piecemealed. But when they arrived here, it's almost like when they tell that story, that's sort of like where my imagination like kind of started with imagining their life in America and them starting out, getting acclimated, getting, English classes, taking their first, going to their first school, finding their first job and stuff like that. And pursuing their, at that time was engineering and like electrical engineering, like very like early on. I think my dad even said his first job was actually trying to get some work as a contractor, doing a carpenter, like doing some like floor work, like for houses while he was doing school. So yeah, it was just like my family and extended family, my aunts and uncles, just a group of them living in Minnesota and all kind of pursuing, what they call the American dream and all that. And that's basically like what instilled into them like their journey of like wanting to always continue working, building a better life out here, starting a family, and yeah, very much all under that idea of, American dream. That they then instill into, our generation or, me, like personally. Yeah.
I didn't know you had a sister. So what's the birth order here? Are you the oldest or the youngest?
No, I'm the younger one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. There it is.
Yeah. Just two of us, but we have a lot of cousins as we do. They're out in LA here. They're spread out LA and Orange County, but I grew up with a lot of cousins. I actually fall right in the middle out of like the group of cousins and siblings. And we all kind of grew up together because of that same story. Our families came over here together. They all lived in Minnesota and then sort of more or less like stuck together. Like even though one of them would come out to California first, they all kind of were like one would come out and then like call up the other ones, be like, "You guys got to come out here," sort of thing, and then it was just trickle them in. Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Yeah, so that's how it all kind of our family being in California kind of came to be. Was just literally like one the older of the group, or the older of the siblings on my older uncle coming out and then like telling my parents to come out or whatever it was, and younger siblings.
I feel that's very similar across the board.
Yeah. I think your mom was the first one to come out to LA, right?
Yeah, it was my dad that came out here first, and then got my mom, and then after that my uncle, and everyone just started trickling in, and then
older brother.
Yep, and then she came along. So yeah.
We're still calling people up. Hey, like, weather's way better out here.
There's still family in Minnesota. We love you, Minnesotans.
Shout out.
Cali soda. But we're like, come to LA.
Yeah.
Come to SoCal.
I wish I had people to shout out Minnesota. I don't.
Not anymore. They all work.
You got them all here.
Yeah, it's interesting. This is a side story, but like my uncle had gone out there, probably like 20 years ago at this point, to kind of go visit that town, and he like did like this documentary type-esque, like with a home camera, just going around. Wow. This is where like and then like he interviewed the church members or like the children of the parents who who took them in.
Cool.
And was like,
That's
hey, we cool. We're here, your parents had taken us in and all that stuff. And so it was an interesting thing to kind of, I vaguely remember that because it was like 20 years ago, and he has like gone out there to do that. Like,
that's
trip.
so awesome.
Yeah. So I know it's meaningful for them.
Yeah,
I know, right? It's just it's like in the home video catalog library, in the archives.
So you got like video production in your family.
I guess
you got filmmakers already in your family.
It's funny. Like I don't know where that is exactly attributed to, though. I think if there is some line to draw, because I actually had thought about that a lot over my career. Was that like, okay, where did creative video production, just storytelling come out of? And I think a lot of it was just the storytelling in essence, so that my parents did, like the inherent storytelling that they've always done, talking about their experiences and everything, was just literally just them talking. And it was like kind of had to imagine, like up to my imagination, like sort of what I was telling you. And then kind of also, you know, hearing the ups and downs, like, you know, obviously a lot of conflict and a lot of like parts that they didn't want to share and that they would kind of share in pieces. And then for me to kind of hear these stories, my sister and I, like hearing these stories over the years and almost having to put that together ourselves. So maybe there's like editing there. I don't know. But like we were like kind of creating that, like, what is that story exactly? You know, and generally over the years, I think we got a good picture of it. And I think as the years go on too, they're definitely more open to talking about their entire experience, like from, you know, the bad times and the good times during that period. So yeah, so it's something that I always thought, I was like, okay, I definitely have to, you know, kind of like hear these stories more and sort of absorb them more, and then perhaps even document them somehow, or like, you know, find that, like, before, you know, before they get too old or whatever it is, like before, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
Stories
need
to be shared and talked about, because that's the history.
Yeah, right.
And, you know, that's our upbringing.
Yeah. Well, this is also like sort of related, but it was 50 years the Vietnam War ending, right? I don't know if you're going to use this, but like basically it was 50 years of the war ending just a month ago or so. And I was in Chicago, had gone to like a random like museum to see like the display that they had, and it was like, oh, 50 years. And then came back here talking to my parents about the trip, and I was like, hey, did you know it was 50 years since, like, and they kind of were like, oh no, they kind of like brushed it off. They were like, oh yeah, huh, like, you know, all right, what else is new?
Yeah.
Like, they kind of just glossed over it, right? And I think that's you know, one of those things of like where the stories come from, and like what they kind of, what was left with them. And I was like, okay, you know, we don't have to talk about it.
I love that though. I think like you said your uncle went back to document all this.
Yeah.
I think that's so cool. Yeah, we'd love to see that. And I think it's awesome because it really helps us like connect the generations and just connect our family stories, you know? Because we hear like stories here and there, and when we grew up as kids, like we're growing up so fast, and we sort of were just like, whatever, we're in our own world. But now as you get older, you're like so curious about like your parents, because they had a life before we were born. And it's just, it's so cool to like hear that. So I'm curious to see that video. That's like really cool.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because I found myself more curious about their life here. I think it was maybe in the last year I've like kind of really absorbed that a little bit more, of like, oh, what, you know, especially being mid-30s now, and like just seeing like, okay, what were they doing at this period of time too, which is roughly when, you know, they were starting a family, like, you know, starting to have kids or whatever it was, my sister and I was like, okay, like trying to make some correlations here, and like, you know, what were they, and, you know, a lot more struggle, so to speak, of like them still working and starting out in their like almost starting from scratch, right, and like trying to figure out work and how to get money, and then also still having a family. You know, we don't have they didn't have the luxury of like family planning or whatever the craziness we do nowadays of trying to plan it down to the minute. But those are like the stories that I try and draw, like, or try and reflect on for them, if anything, and start to ask them like what that life was, you know, when they first came, like, you know, to California, like trying to get those details now, you know, like versus before I was just kind of like, okay, you're just telling me another story, you know,
right.
This is like almost, and there usually that story was wrapped up in like some random lesson or unsolicited advice, and it was kind of like, okay, I don't want to hear that. Yeah, it's like, okay, cool, thanks. And now it's like, probably there's some value there now.
Their life experience. Yeah, because like it is curious to know, because, you know, they moved around a lot.
Yeah,
it's also thinking of what they needed to bring from Minnesota to California, or, you know, with your grandparents coming from Vietnam coming over here, like how,
I didn't even know those
like
things.
what I think that's where it ties into, I guess, scarcity. It's like rationing what you have and making sure you have enough to get to the next
Right. Yeah.
location or
Yeah.
just surviving the day.
Yeah.
You know,
You say that, I'm like, these are those details that I didn't even ask them. I'm like, oh yeah, you just came to San Diego from St. James, Minnesota. I was like, and these are the questions I didn't ask. Did you take a car?
Yeah.
Did you
Yeah.
did you
Yeah.
pack
How'd you
up
get
everything
here?
in
Right.
the car? Like,
what did
you
you have?
Yeah, what did you have? Did you like? I don't think pretty sure they didn't fly over here.
Yeah.
Like it was just probably like packed whatever they had in the car and drove.
Was it the Oregon Trail coming to
Yeah, was it the Oregon
California?
Trail? Yeah, exactly.
You have to hitchhike
Like,
to get
yeah,
you know.
like what snacks did you bring?
Yeah.
You know, that stuff. Like those are the
This is the
stories,
time to ask those
right?
questions.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And yeah, it sounds like all of a sudden it was like, oh, we were trying to make it work there, now we're trying to make it work here. And it's like, okay, but there's also still the nuggets of like, yeah, like how did you get by and like, figure out like what you're
Right.
saying. Yeah, like being resourceful, like, like I find myself doing that a lot in like, where different situations, of course, but just like always trying to, understand like, okay, what's essential, the resourcefulness and maybe the scarcity aspect of it too. And I think a lot of that may have been that same thing that just came, where they had to think like that in those situations.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Did you have any early memories of, making sure you guys had enough to eat or finances? If you want to get into that, or if you have any recollection of
well,
it?
at a high level, it was interesting because it wasn't not so much like food insecure or any of that sort. I think a lot of where the family actually, my earliest memories like were with also like my grandparents, who like very much helped and contributed to my parents. My grandparents were on food stamps and like welfare, like, so it was anything that they had or that they had obtained, from government programs or whatever it was. One of my like earlier memories is like them always trying to like give that away to us, or like whatever it was, or like just be like, hey, we got extra cereal, just here's some cereal, or like whatever it is. So it was kind of like a shared system in that way, of course, as families do.
Yes.
And then my parents on their own, maybe more so just getting by, like get it, enough to get by, like I said, maybe not as much of the insecurity or like, not too in the depths in a way, but just it was enough to get by. So it wasn't anything that I remember that was like like, oh, we don't have like a meal or anything.
I do love that you mentioned the grandparents also contributed, and it was like a big part of growing up, and again, everyone coming together to help the collective family,
and that's just
so you have that support
right
system.
That's like more direct support. It was literally like, here's food, and they'll not both my grandparents are not here anymore, but just like older aunts and whatever it is, like the older generation who are still around are still doing that of like, the offering of like when you come over and you're like, oh, here's a bag of fruit to take home. Different meaning now, is just more just the giving.
You don't leave empty-handed when
you don't leave empty-handed, right? You don't
family.
leave, no matter how like,
no matter you're like, oh no, I'm good.
How good you are, so to
No.
speak, how good you are. No, it's and I think the gesture is now different, whereas before, like more or less, I would say that it's probably coming from the same place, maybe, but it definitely has different weight to it. And I think before, that was more like, okay, we want to help you out, help each other, like the collective aspect of it. And that was like something through not just my grandparents, but like the whole family in that way, like kind of that the core group that I'm talking about.
Yep. Yeah. Because I know for me, earlier on, like I guess in my 20s, I would decline the food that like my parents would like pack to go. Like, oh, take this with you. And I'm like, no, I'm good. I'm able to provide for myself now, and like I don't need this. But now, in my late 30s, I'm just like, this is how they show love and care, and this is just ingrained in them, and I'm just now accepting it instead of like declining it. I'm just like, okay, yeah, sure, I'll take it. I'll take this extra fruit, no problem. Being more open about it, because like that's what they were used to in their generational
exactly.
and it is nice. It's like, okay, yeah, she cares, and I lost my dad a couple years ago, so it's just like I don't know how much long I'll have my mom, so I'm just seeing it as like they're still around.
Yeah.
This will make them also happy, and it makes me happy that they're still caring about making my well-being, and just like, here's some food for you.
Yeah.
Make sure you take some to go, even though I don't need it, but it's nice.
Right, exactly. The declining could be a love language in itself.
Yeah.
Just saying no and rejecting them all the time. Because my parents did that with the grandparents over
Right.
the years.
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh, I'm doing the same thing. I'm
Yeah.
saying no to everything. But,
Yep.
they obviously don't. They don't see it that way. Or they don't comprehend this.
Right.
They just go, no, you're going to just take it.
Just take it.
Just take it.
Just take it.
It's like something is so like what love language? Just take this. They're too practical for that stuff.
Right, yeah. For sure. But yeah, still there. And yeah, just want to make sure they're taken care of. So
Yeah, right. Yeah.
the next apple or banana that you have.
Yeah.
Calamansi. This girl always brings calamansi. She has a tree,
Have a
everything.
tree and
Endless calamansi for us,
so
which is
much
what
to
we're
harvest.
drinking from
Yes.
Sanzo right now.
Thank you,
Yes.
Sanzo.
Thank you,
And
Sanzo.
Celebrating it up. Happy Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month, everyone. And thank you to Sanzo for handing us over some calamansi.
Yeah,
We got Leanne Wong on here.
I love it. Well, I'm kind of curious because you had mentioned American Dream earlier, right? And we had talked about this in previous podcasts, but what did that look like for your family? Like, for us, it was like, you got to be a doctor, you got to make money. We didn't have that opportunity. Is it similar or?
Yeah, it's pretty on the nose with all the, the usual
okay.
The usual
stereotypes.
occupations.
Yeah, the usual
You're like,
occupation.
What were you
list
supposed to
of
be? A
things.
doctor, lawyer?
I
Did
was
they
pushed
push
to, oh
you
yeah,
towards-
yeah.
Yeah.
It was medical. It was all medical, and yeah, I come from a family of doctor, nurses, engineer, pharmacist. So more or less they all fell in line. I was a little black sheepish, but I was yeah
Yes.
yeah. Which it was interesting. I mean, talking about the scarcity stuff, it was like, okay, like you do all that to not not struggle, basically.
Right. It's like, why
There
are
I-
you choosing
Right,
this
yeah.
path that
Yeah,
you're gonna struggle
exactly.
more when you've already struggled for a better opportunity for you?
100%.
That
100%.
guilt.
Yeah, the guilt and shame of your occupational
Yeah.
choice.
Yeah, and I think that's what drove some of those lessons of like, or you say lessons, but they're more just the hammering of unsolicited advice of basically like, do this because, we came from nothing and you came here to have a better life, American dream, more so to, so you don't feel that. And I think what's missing there is like the actual, the actual going through it, like the actual like living through that, right? It's like, okay, easier said than done, but there are those things that regardless of whatever journey you decide to go down, I noticed, I talked about this with my family, with like cousins and sister, and it's just like, even if that was the case of going down a traditional path or like that path that they wanted for them, there's still some of these things that carry along too, of like this scarcity mindset, how you go about buying and saving and spending, and all that, planning, that make its way into another area of your life, though you are like more secure, more or less, or stable. I think it still presents itself in a different way for different people.
With you bringing up like the unsolicited advice, I know for me, growing up when I didn't follow that path of being in the medical field and getting into media and what have you, it was a struggle because that is, again, new to them. Like no one went that route. And so they were like, why are you doing this? We sacrificed all these things to get you to where we are now, and you're choosing something that's going to struggle. And again, I know it came from love, but growing up, I thought it was like, oh, you're not letting me do what I want to do.
Sure.
And took it that way. But, in time, like some of the advice was like, oh, why'd you choose this major? You're not going to make X amount of dollars annually,
Yeah.
and sending me, again, articles and links of like the 5 top majors that your child should not be getting into. So it was a struggle. And again, I'm thankful for sticking to what I know and love. And it was tough to show my passion in this field, and also showing the success that I was able to get to this point. Because I get it. Back then, that it was rare. It's like you don't, and it's a different world now, obviously, with the digital and media and everything. But no one really saw the potential of how successful someone could be in this field back in the 90s, 2000, early 2000s.
That's true. That's true. I also, I just think like they didn't have that, they just didn't have that almost reach in their own mind of like where this could go, right? Or like where these things could go. It's almost like these paths that they kind of regurgitate that become stereotypes are just kind of said and not thought about. There's no depth there. And honestly, there wasn't too much depth because they didn't actually know, right? It's like they didn't come from, it's not like they had like a medical background that was like, oh yeah, here's how med school goes, as traditional other families that actually, the friends that I had growing up, and they were going into medical school because their parents are doctors, and they come from a line of doctors and all that stuff. So it's like we didn't have that. So it was like basically it was going after like just the root of like, I think what we were talking about earlier, just like, no, do this so you don't have to worry about money. Mostly money. It's all money. I think it's all like money related to like what they were talking about.
Financial success.
Financials.
Financial freedom, and that pressure.
Talking
About pressure, have you ever felt pressure to succeed financially for your family, or versus not just for yourself? Like, is there a collective expectation?
It's it was definitely an indirect one where I think the pressure is just there by default.
It's like embedded.
It's just embedded. But
born.
in terms of like motivation and like drive, motivation, and like what that transpired to, I wouldn't say for myself that was the case, because it was more so focused on actually the counterpart that you're actually talking about, which is like actually trying to show that there is a way or a path. So it wasn't about the finance. I think in part that also it just included it just naturally. It's like, you can, basically the point to be made was that like you can make money doing this, like, and that was the thing to prove, so to speak, right? So I think the pressure there was more so to make it apparent that this is a path, like this is very legitimate, and like it is.
Yep. No, I agree with you there, and I felt the same. Growing up and making sure that I could be on my own, like in terms of like that mindset, making sure I was financially covered and backed up, that I had 2 jobs in order to like finally move out. Like I worked a day shift and then a night shift in editing, basically. Working a day shift as like a post coordinator, and then at night I was like a night AE assistant editor at a company, and I had to like drive to the west side, and that was my hustle in order for me to like make sure I didn't need to go back home and ask for like, I didn't feel like I was succeeding if I didn't make sure I was hustling to take care of myself financially, independent from my parents. Because at the end of the day, yes, my parents wanted me to stay home and live under their roof, which is yes, there's always a fallback, which is nice. But that's not where I wanted to be and stay. So I was like, I had to prove myself that I can do this in this field. And financially be, financially secure. Financially secure in that field, and making sure I could pay rent and all, food and just making sure I was good.
Yeah,
And showing them that, yes,
I totally respect that.
this
and
is,
understand that. Yeah.
there was no blueprint. And like, this
No,
is
yeah.
where, hey, we can do this, or I can do this in this field.
Right, yeah.
And I don't need to go this traditional path.
Yeah, I totally respect that hustle because, like, I feel a lot of similarities. I had to basically present a spreadsheet to my dad, actually, about like here's
like a
how-
proposal.
almost is like here's the financials of what this looks like for me to
wow,
be
you
on
went-
my
you
own
went
in
deep.
terms of like not living under the roof. Like,
Yeah.
like exactly like through the the odd jobs, like half internship, half gigs that I was doing. Did photos and videos, photography, videography, to basically help sustain, and then plus with internships, and that was like, here's the plan, like here's that plan you asked for as a spreadsheet. Yeah.
What was his response?
He was like, okay, like you're clearly like onto something, because he was like, I would like it was almost at a point of like he's not gonna like grill it, because he's like, there's clear thought that went into this.
Yeah.
You did your
Yeah.
homework, right?
Yeah.
Oh,
It's like I did my homework, and I
Yeah.
think that might have been it, or you just might have been too tired that day to like,
Yeah.
to like,
He's just like, okay.
to fight, yeah.
Yeah.
And I
Not
was
gonna
like,
go
yeah.
over line by line.
Yeah, exactly. It is like, okay, yeah, I guess that's
Wow.
what it takes. And I think at that time I was like, okay, I guess that's what it takes. But at the same time, looking back now, I'm like, yeah, I guess that did still it instilled something, right? And like that hustle, and like, and the hustle to a means, right? And a means to an end of like, okay, there's something like purposeful here of like why you're going out and doing these things to build your own, to do your own, to be your own, whatever it was. I was very much motivated by that. So that this part of that was like just the little blocker that I was like, I just need to get past this blocker, which is the the parental thing. But I think after the fact, it's like, yeah, I look back on it, I'm like, well, that was definitely good. The good practice to have. And maybe they didn't do that, it almost felt like, this is something they may have done in a different way, like of just being consciously always like thinking about money when they were just first making money, like what we were talking about earlier. It's like when they first got their jobs, and like, I personally, again, didn't have to worry about like, food on the table or any of that stuff, but I'm sure like they were figuring that stuff out like on the fly. I doubt they didn't have Microsoft Excel at that time.
Yeah.
So they were just doing this on the fly somehow, or like writing, sticky
On
notes.
like a little piece
yeah,
of paper in their
for real.
pocket.
Exactly. So I was like,
handwritten,
okay, this is, it's a different version of that, but it is a version of that exercise, I think, of like, here's what it means by like doing like your own financially, supporting yourself financially, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I know you mentioned your sisters, you have an older sister, so you and I are the youngest ones.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to know if it was similar. So like with my mom, my brother's very successful. He is to this day. Love him so much. And he
Yeah.
kind of followed a path that my mom wanted.
Yeah.
So by the time it got to me, she was kind of like, okay, like you still have to follow this path, but she was a bit more relaxed.
Yeah.
And my brother and I talk about this all the time. He's like, has the oldest one, she was so hard on me, you have it so easy. And so I'm kind of curious, like with your upbringing, your relationship with your sister, was it
Yeah.
the same way? Did she like pave the way and they're like, okay, Kevin, you know what? You have this spreadsheet, you're fine. You can do whatever you want. Or what's that family dynamic like?
Yeah, strengths and weaknesses. I think I thrive on this stuff. I mean, to this day, I thrive on these things of like, okay, the management, organizing, and like being very conscious of that. And I think in contrast, my sister went down the tradition. She's a surgeon now. She's great.
Okay.
Shout out my sister. Yeah, she's super proud of her, and like she's amazing at like life. But she very much did that because that was like what my parents had wanted for her, and and she kind of just took that and like ran with it, right? And carving that path in a way was more so like, okay, we have to like figure out what I'm doing, like in a sense. So the pressure mostly came back around of like, okay, so what are you doing? Or like, and like that's
I
where
see.
that came out of. So it wasn't easier necessarily. It was just, it was different because it was like, okay, this is obviously like what your sister's doing.
Yeah.
And it's like, what are you doing? And like, And again, playing on like the like strengths and weaknesses or whatever it is, like that I found over time that was like, okay, this is the figuring out on your own and kind of, self-managing or whatever it is. I'm like, okay, this is something that I guess I'm good at, and I'll run with that one.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of the dynamic of having an older sister who kind of already followed that more or less. But then for me, I was like, okay, I'm gonna have to figure it out, and that means like kind of going back to the drawing board on everything, which it's financials,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
figuring out finances.
All ties back to money in some way.
It still all ties back to money.
But yeah, for me, it's like following my passion, of course, is more important. I'm feeling the struggle of money as an entrepreneur. And actually, yeah, before we came on the show, you and I were talking about, like, I came from financial planning. So I reached a level of success that my family appreciated. And then last year left that to become an entrepreneur. So I'm kind of back in the, Nina, what are you doing with your life type of thing. But I don't regret it. But what I've learned in financial planning is that, much like your grandparents and our parents' upbringing, it was just surviving every day. So it was like, when I come from financial planning, I say, planning for retirement. What does the next 5 to 10 years look like for you? You want to buy a house. We do all that planning, which I think is very important. There's a lot of value. I couldn't do what I'm doing now as an entrepreneur if I didn't plan for myself, which my parents didn't teach me at all, right? But I think it's important. And in financial planning, we talked about this, like immigrant families and why people are struggling and why people can't retire. Because for us, at least for Filipinos, the expectation is that your kids do well and they take care of you when you retire. That's kind of the expectation. It's a little loose now. It's very different. Like your mom's doing fine, my mom's doing fine, but that was like the expectation back then. That was the expectation for our parents, because we had your mom had to take care of grandma, or our aunts
with us,
uncles. We all had to take care of her, and that was just it was a generational thing, right? So yeah, growing up, it was surviving every day, getting food on the table. Much like you, my grandma on my dad's side, she was also on welfare. So yeah, she did the same thing. Hey, I got all this stuff. Let's provide for the family. So it was coming together as a family and providing. But I think it's so different now with our generation because we've become independent, or I guess financially independent, where it's different now, right? So yeah, I think we view money differently now. The way our parents viewed it was very different. The way our grandparents viewed it, very different. And so, but there's all these connections from each generation that has led us to our spending habits now. And it's almost like overcompensating for what they didn't have.
Yeah, totally.
And that's very dangerous. Like going to Costco and being like, hey, this t-shirt's on sale. I'm going to buy 10 because, because I can, or whatever the reasoning is.
Totally.
Yeah. So, I mean, how do you view money now, if you don't mind answering that question, and kind of like, what have you learned from your parents in terms of money and habits?
Yeah. I mean, I learned a lot about what to do, what to not do. The not do would be the hoarding aspect, because there's a lot of that today, like which is, as we were talking about before the recording, was different place where they were before, where they are now, and like since maybe in the last like 10 years or so is when 10 to 15 years or so, when I would say they're more like very stable, comfortable, and like very much like living their dream, and like and then now it's almost like when they go and doing the hoarding or whatever it is, the deal, like buying things just because they're on sale type of thing.
It's a good deal. We should get that.
The
Costco
but
trap.
you don't need it.
You don't need it. Who's this
It's
for?
just gonna
I'm
sit
pretty
at
sure
home for
Costco
another 5
has,
years.
I'm pretty sure the Costco profit is like mostly Asian American immigrants. The revenue from Costco, but like it's basically that went in the opposite direction, and those are some of the things that I've found over time that I'm like, I'm adverse to that. I'm like, this is really like ironic, coming out of the situation that we came, or, you know, just like kind of growing out of a situation like that, and then having this be like the complete opposite of what it was before. So the, you know, how I go about, you know, I would consider myself more essential. Like I really, yeah, more of like in this, like I minimal essential, whatever you want to call it. Like I just, whatever is needed sort of thing. And I like my things, but also like very like specific things. I don't like to have too many, like I don't, an abundance of things. Right. And because I didn't grow up with that. And it was like, yeah, I didn't grow up with a lot. And that's why it's interesting to see that in my parents only after, you know, having crossed to this period of life where it's like, yeah, this is, now I see it in a different perspective, but I didn't grow up with that by any means, like when they were doing the hoarding or whatever that habit is. So yeah, I very much like reflect and see my habits now actually more of what I was like instilled with like growing up, you know, not having a lot to go off of and just working with what you have.
Yeah.
And that, you know, and I kind of like, it's interesting is like, yeah, I think there's good and bad. I think maybe there's that negative association perhaps, like, you know, when we say scarcity or like whatever it is, and there's the opposite side of talking about that, or the other complementary side, whatever you want to call it, where it is actually like the essential, like, you know, I think about things that like only get what you need sort of thing, and like only, you know, spend what you have, and, you know, again, money and budgeting and all that stuff. I think the scarcity mindset in that way has like kind of fed into these habits that I view as positive now, or I view as like, oh, these are actually like things that, these are you know, habits or you know, things of discipline, or that I had to either teach myself or reteach myself from like whatever I grew up with, kind of, and you know, put that in my life today, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I'm very much a minimalist, as Tiff knows, and I've mentioned on this show. Yeah, I mean, I started doing this like 10 years ago. I was like, all this clutter in my house, like I feel like it's affecting me mentally. It's cluttering my mind. And also I wanted to start saving money, right? And thinking about the future. So I'm the same way. It's like basic essentials. And my rule is I don't use a credit card. Like if I can't afford to buy it at that moment, I won't buy it. Because that means like it's only something that I want. It's like a luxury. But like basic essentials only. And it's helped. I mean, coming from financial planning, like that's what I would advise clients, and that's what I advise anyone. But I mean, everyone has their own way of living life. So for me, I'm a lot happier. I think mentally it's helped. It's helped my anxiety. It's so much easier to clean your house when you don't have a lot of stuff too, which is great.
1000%.
You know,
Yeah.
like, and then when I had to move from my other place to the place I have now, it was like a breeze. Like,
Yeah.
even I hired movers, and they're like, "Why'd you even hire us? You have like nothing." I'm like, man, I like paid these guys to like move like 2 boxes. But
Yeah.
yeah, and that came from my parents. Like, you know, there was a time period where we were struggling a little bit, and then we were doing really well, and that's when they started hoarding.
Right.
You know, and then I saw that as like, oh, I don't want to live like that. Like we had like our basement, you couldn't even walk through it because my dad and my mom had bought all this stuff. And again, it's stuff that was on sale. They went to the garage sale, they saw it, and now they're not using it. It's just collecting dust.
Sure. Yeah.
And so for me, I'm like, I don't want to be that way. It's like the opposite effect. Like, no thanks, not for me.
Yeah. It's like I have like a Marie Kondo voice in my head, except it's the opposite of a Marie Kondo. It's not.
Joy.
Except mine's not nice and like, you know, very. Mine's more like, no, get rid of this crap. Just throw it out. Right. It means nothing.
If it's expired, throw it out. Like my mom's like, no, it's still good. I'm like, this expired like 2 years ago. She's like, but it's in the fridge. I'm just like, no. No.
It's still good.
It's got preservatives. There's a lot of preservatives. Yeah.
All the condiments.
Too many condiments.
Yeah. No, it's interesting that you and I actually had a question for you.
Sure.
You mentioned financial planning.
Yep.
Do you work with like Asian Americans, immigrant families, that type?
Well, that's what we're trying to do before. So like, we're just like, why are minorities not doing financial planning? And I think it is rooted in that they just didn't have that upbringing.
Yeah.
Their parents and their grandparents, everything was like, how can we survive today? It wasn't anything about the future. I think that's going to change now, but even now, it's still hard. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, when I was in that business, I had reached out to like a handful of people in my family. They're like, oh no, we're fine. We're gonna figure it out later, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, now like my aunts and my uncles, my mom, they're in that retirement age. My mom's fine, but it's also like she's 72 and she's still trying to figure out like a part-time job because she's like, well, I still need to like be able to figure out how to pay my rent and stuff. And it's like, because she didn't plan for it. So I think like it's just budgeting and kind of reworking what you have to help it grow in the future. And I think that's hard for
1000%,
not
yeah.
just, it's hard for anyone to think
Right,
that
yeah.
way in a society where we have ads and things that are like, hey, buy this, you need this, you know?
100%.
It's
yeah.
being bombarded. I mean, you're
Yeah.
not on social media, but like when I'm scrolling through Instagram, I'm like, oh man, that looks so
Oh,
good.
but I
And
can-
get
I can
all the-
all the
imagine.
sponsored
Yeah.
ads.
I
Yeah.
can see where there's
Yeah.
there's a pull to just spend in this world. But no, first that's great. I mean, that's I've actually met at like networking with another colleague that does financial planning for more Black-owned businesses,
Oh,
and
nice.
similar like what purpose or mission going in of like, obviously because it wasn't talked about, or this is something that they didn't have instilled or whatever it is. And I think I was like, okay, this is something important because it isn't disclosed, is like what you're saying. It actually is talked about, like what we're
Yeah.
talking about here. It's
Yeah.
like it's 100% talked about. Just
Yeah.
it's not disclosed like to planners or to whatever it is, like advisors, planners,
Yeah.
or even in like a network, right? Whereas like our generation or our culture now is a little bit more open to talking about this stuff, right? And I think that's a positive thing, more or less. But even down to like at the familial level of like talking about it and like getting it out and just like talking about the budgeting and all that, I think it's just that much more important, like now more than ever, because of like all of the the reasons not to, basically.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everything that's working against it.
Yeah. So we all got to do it.
Future planning.
Future planning.
Future planning. This is when a sponsor would come in about like
I know.
It'd be nice. Sponsor us.
financial planning from
I know.
Yeah.
whatever it is.
I know. I wish like yeah. I'm curious. Oh, the healing and growth. Oh, the healing and growth. We got to talk about the healing growth. You know, that's my favorite part. Oh, what about this? What would you tell your younger self about money, security, and self-worth? I know you mentioned you're in your mid-30s, so
yeah, that's great, because it's like sort of what we were talking about earlier with just some of those things that I look back on that I already did without even thinking about it. And probably, if anything, I would first say like, good job, bud. Like, gotta like self-compassion a little bit, because again, I tell that story about like the presenting my parents with like a spreadsheet of like moving out. I'm like, again, that was like not even like, who would do that sort of thing, right? So I think like what I would say probably more so is that like it's something to like kind of practice. I would almost like wish it upon my younger self to practice more of just like being okay with like not worrying about I think it's like the worrying about the scarcity or whatever it is, like the lack thereof. And I wouldn't say spend more by any means. I don't think that would be like what I would, or be more open to spending. I wouldn't say that, but I would just be like, be worried about it less, because more or less like investing in yourself, working like the working hard the hustle, and like that's what I would probably tell my younger self, is that like the hustle like pays off more or less, whether it's like, if it's not financially paying off, like literally, like I do believe it'll eventually, but then also it will pay off in a different way, like right, or like different skill sets and things that are not so financially dependent. Whereas like at that time when you're going through the hustle, like if that's your motivation, then, that was a large part of my motivation, was like, okay, just gotta make money and like, do the hustle, and then prove the path that this works, or whatever it is, like prove that that's all going to work out. So yeah, it would be like kind of telling my younger self to like trust that, trust the hustle.
I love that. I love that answer. And there's a balance, right? Like you have to be financially responsible, but also like you got to follow your passion. But I love what you said, like investing in yourself. I think that's what I would tell my younger self too, is like invest in yourself, not like just financially, but just in terms of, I really just, I wasn't super responsible when I was younger. I would say I probably partied more and I didn't take things seriously, but I could invest in myself more or believed in myself more. I think now at 40, I'm chasing my dream and I love it. I don't think it's ever too late, but I think there are certain things I would have done differently to get myself to a better spot now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I love everything you said. It's exactly what I would have told
Yeah,
myself.
actually, yeah, and it makes me think I would have encouraged myself to explore more because of that.
Yeah,
I think there's a
same.
part of that, because like, the chasing your passion. It's funny you say the chasing your passion, because even there's a part of me that kind of like is still almost like reserved about like embracing that, because of that's not what we were like, that's not what was
Right.
brought up in us, of like, that muscle doesn't exist. So
Yep.
in a way though, like in order to encourage that, I would have like wanted to explore more, right? Of like, if it's not chasing a passion, at least just exploring, and like not, again, so being so fixated on whatever it is, this one thing that I had to like continue hustling and trying to make something out of it. Very happy and grateful for everything that came out of it, but also like I do think I'm like, oh, yeah, well, what if I did this with other avenues, which I think over time I'm exploring now and like doing different things now. So to your point, I would have wished that earlier, like do that in the 20s, because then you can go even crazier. Like in your 20s, like do some weird shit, like whatever it is. Like go actually like explore.
What about you, Tiff? What
basically,
would you tell your younger self?
No, I agree there. And trusting the process, because I know there were so many hurdles growing up, and there was some doubt. But at the end of the day, I was like, no, this is what I feel most comfortable in. This is what I want to do. Trust the process. You'll figure it out. And basically, manifesting that this is going to happen for you. And I didn't really see any other plan B or option. I just stuck to it.
Right.
And hopefully, for telling myself that, like, trust the process. Don't give up. Try again. Because like you said, I had these internships, and this is back in the day when they were unpaid internships, or they paid,
or
they pay for your mileage. And my parents questioned that, like, why are you basically doing free labor? But the experience that I got from those internships was very, very valuable, and helped me get through to where I am today. So telling myself, trust the process, don't give up. Keep trying again. And with the scarcity mindset, like me planning ahead, when I did finally move out, I made sure I had enough savings to do that, to fall back into. I was like, I was already steady in the job 3 to 4 months in, and I was like, okay. And I got the second job, and I was like, all right, this is a good time for me to, I'm not foolish where I didn't have to do a spreadsheet, but at least I showed that.
No one should have to do the spreadsheet.
But I was like, I have 2 jobs. I can financially, depend on myself. And showing proof to them, like, I can do this, and went with it in the late 2000s and got out of there. But trust the process. And I love that. Invest in yourself. I love that.
I love that
I think
too.
that's the title of this episode.
I think so.
Invest in yourself.
I think so. Yeah.
Yes. Invest in yourself.
We should all invest in ourselves.
Yes.
Yeah. Trust the process. Trust yourself too.
Trust yourself.
Yeah. Doubts kill dreams. I tell myself that every day.
Yeah.
I woke up today. I was
Dream
like,
killer.
what am I doing? Okay. Trust myself.
Yep. But in celebration of Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month, I did want to ask and pose a question to our listeners, audience members, ourselves. Which Asian Pacific icon are you inspired by at this time?
I mean, I feel like this is inspiring me right now.
That's inspiring right now.
Look at that. Love always seeing an Asian American in the sports world. Yeah, I'm just inspired by that because, honestly, like I played baseball, softball, volleyball growing up. So did my brother. We don't have a lot of Asian Americans in the sports world, and I think we're seeing more of that. And I'm excited by that, you know? So, yeah. Representation. What about you guys?
I was going to shout out John Chu, as my icon for this year. Just seeing his films and basically like basically seeing him break barriers. And I did see a speech of his at the latest like Gold House Gala where, you know, The Rock mentioned to him like, hey, it's so great to see a brother that looks just like me that's directing a film, and there's more than just a token, you know, API member in the it's in front of the camera and behind the camera. So just him breaking the barriers, and I think he's so great. And I loved Wicked, big fan. So yeah, I think I would shout him out for my API icon.
Nice.
Yeah. First one that comes to mind is Jimmy O Yang.
Yes,
I love
so
Jimmy.
I
funny.
love Jimmy.
He's so funny.
So funny.
I've been just watching like more stand up lately, and like he just stuck out. I think a lot of the talking to the stereotypes, but really just like bringing them to light again, and just like just great humor and great stories talking about his like parents and stuff. Never gets old. And I think it's just like it'll always be relatable,
Totally
like,
relatable, yeah.
and it'll always just make me laugh. Like even when I'm feeling like real down or whatever, I just watch a clip of that. And I'm like, this
So
is
good.
this is so great.
Oh, Jimmy. Shout out to Jimmy.
Shout out Jimmy.
Jimmy.
Awesome. Well, Kevin, thank you so much for joining us
Thank
today.
you
It
for
was
being here today and sharing.
so great hearing your story and your background. And actually, I'm curious, where can we find you and your work? I know you don't do social media, but I know you have your own company. Where can we find that if you want to be found?
Yeah, no.
If you
I
want to
mean,
be
it's all my
incognito,
work,
then
so,
you know,
yeah.
never mind.
Yeah, I mean, I'm starting up something right now. Everyone should check out Vibeset, music curation.
Okay.
Nice. Yeah, I'm building an app right now, and I'm actually very focused on that. So I think a lot of whatever would funnel through me, just go check that out.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks again for joining us. And for everyone out there, make sure to like, subscribe, comment. We are on YouTube now also.
Right.
Tiff will put the link down here. We're on IG. And yeah, always good to be with you guys. Happy AAPI month. And we will see you next time.
See ya.
Bye.